Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, hi, this is Attican, and welcome to part 4 of our playthrough of the Dominion Day scenario from the Great Lakes DLC. And we've been going along great guns, doing well. We now have a new task to create a company value of $8 million. And you can see there, just by letting it run a little bit, we've accumulated over $3 million quickly. So our economy's looking pretty good right now. We've got a pretty strong little system going here. We've grown some cities so that we're getting some good freight and passengers moving around. We've even got some passenger-only lines, passenger mail lines, which is unusual for me. In fact, right here I'm checking to see just how much money we're making.
The state of your business depends in great parts on the general economic progress. I highly recommend you to ensure direct access to parts of the U.S. market.
So you can see our goals to...
Intensified involvement in the exchange of commodities at the border would grant border crossing traffic for the Grand Trunk Railway into the USA.
Okay, so we've got to build up our company value to $8 million, then we'll get a whole new set of tasks. And that won't take much. We could literally just let it run. But... you notice there, we've actually inherited some new stuff. We didn't build any of that stuff down there in Ottawa and Toronto and London. And we see there's a trading center down there to create cloth, which is a good thing. And there's and what they want us to do here. There, we just got some tasks to add on to the others. We need to ship some... fur to Ottawa. We need to ship winter clothing to Toronto, and of course we've got our winter clothing up there in Saguenay, and that's the one that we just got through in the prior episode, shipping all that cloth to Saguenay so that they can make winter clothing. Now, the interesting thing here is that I didn't do. I kind of got. I'm not sure what I was thinking, but I kind of forgot myself. I forgot what I was. Those requirements, and I just went delete crazy here. And I've said before, I don't like inheriting track and stations and setups, particularly the track layouts. I like to kind of do my own. So I started cleaning this up and. Probably, in hindsight, should have left that station in Ottawa because I definitely need Ottawa, but I wasn't really thinking clearly, I have to admit. But right now, my first focus was actually to build this big long line to Saguenay. So I'm trying to figure out how am I going to connect Saguenay to Toronto without, passing over 14 lines. Because if you see, if I try to take a direct route, I'm going to have to cross over all that stuff we built up in part 1 and part 2 of this series. So looking for an alternative, and I realize I can take a more southern route and go down here and cross over the river south of Montreal. Got just enough room to do that. Swing back up and then take advantage of that line we've already got going across that we built for our Halifax to Saguenay warehouse to warehouse connection. So now we've got some promise here. In fact, I could have even, now that I'm looking at it, I probably could have even borrowed the track that's running the logs and the wheat. But again, I like dedicated lines as much as possible. So we're going to expand the station here in Saguenay. Then we're going to use a line coming out of that. And we're going to hook it up to this line we've already created, which goes across this big expensive bridge across what I think is the St. Lawrence Seaway. Somebody who's good at geography, let me know if that's true. And so now we've got a connection there. So that was easy to get a connection into Saguenay and to hook it up to get it going from Saguenay across the river. And now I'm doing it straight out of Saguenay because the warehouse is full. The warehouse has everything. Now, I could have created another warehouse, but you can see there, because of the geography, it's actually getting really crowded. So I decided to go just past that supply tower and then start hooking up and running across here. So we're going to run across kind of down along the river, cross over the existing line we have coming out of Montreal, and then cross over the river again back to the other side down here in the south. South of our known world, so to speak, the part we're allowed to build in. There's, of course, much more going on further south of us, but we're not allowed to go there yet. So now we've got a line that's going to come down south of Montreal and allow us to get a direct connection from Saguenay to Toronto. Now I'm going all the way back there just to see which side of the track this really is. I want to make sure that when I hook this up, I'm hooking it up to plugging it in on the right track going there to Toronto. So that looks pretty good. That's a long way. That's a long trip from Saguenay to Toronto, especially when you have to go down south, cross over the river, come back in under Montreal, cross back over the river, and then work your way down to Toronto. That's a long journey. And this one is giving me trouble, and I think the source of the trouble is the crossover right here. We're coming up to it. This crossover, because it has to cross over the that track again, is making this a challenge. And see, it's not snapping into place on both sides of the track the way we'd like it to. But right there, we know it can't actually snap. So there we've got it there. It looks pretty good. So as soon as we fix that, then everything except this very last end part here seems to work. Oh, and I think I see the problem now. I'm trying to run it on the wrong side. It's actually should be the, I don't know if you want to call it inside or outside. It should be the track on the other side there. Well, am I wrong? Because now it looks like I've got it right. All right, I take that back. You can see why I get confused building track. I can't even describe it watching it. So anyway, there we go. Wasn't that lovely? How simple is that? So we've got this big long track running from Saguenay to Toronto, and what we're going to do is set up an automatic line between Saguenay and Toronto. Ta-da! And it will haul goods and passengers and mail, make us a bunch of money, and the big thing it will do is haul winter clothing from Saguenay to Toronto. I hope I said Toronto over there. So that's going to be one of our tasks. It's actually our second task. I'll punch in a minute and realize I've got a task before that I need to take care of. And you notice I'm not really paying attention to the company value because I know that the company value, we're on the cusp of it. We're making profit at a big time. We're also, by the way, laying more track, which adds to your value, setting up, building bridges, which add to your value. All these things that we're creating are adding to our company value. Plus they're creating the opportunity to make more money. So we're going to set up a line, and we're going to have it. We actually set it up to run full, which hindsight, that's not the smartest thing I ever did, but really not necessary in this case. But of course, what we're really after is those winter clothes. So we're going to set it up to run full. So you can load up with whatever priorities, winter clothes. When you get full, take off. and we're going to run that line from Saguenay to Toronto. We'll run a bunch of trains on it to get this task done. But you can see we're not getting winter clothing yet, which is perplexing me a little bit, because we are creating winter clothing, but we don't have any available to export right this moment. So that'll come. So we're just going to load up a bunch of trains. We actually switched over to the Dragon here for this particular line, and we'd like to move all the Philadelphias over to Dragons for the time being. I say time being because then we'll want to upgrade those later to the Canadian and the Achilles. That's where we're really headed, the two new trains. We'll get the Canadian for our freight and the Achilles for our passenger lines. And see, here's where I'm, again, back to that. I'm trying to figure out how do I do my upgrade. So what I decided to do was just upgrade everything. I mentioned this in the other video. I just moved everything to a Dragon. So now everything's been upgraded to Dragon, and then went in and grabbed out, amongst those, I grabbed out the passenger mail only routes, and then upgraded those back to the Rogers American, which gave us the express trains. So now we've got express trains running our passenger mail lines, and we've got Dragons running everything else. So we should see the whole system improve in terms of speed and what have you. We should be moving goods faster and faster now. So to get Winter Club, trying to figure out why I didn't see the shipments early, and I wanted to make sure. I feel like I need to grow Toronto. So we inherited this setup down here with London, with the meat industry, and Toronto there. It's already hooked up, so we're going to start running meat over to Toronto to help it grow, and just make us more money, of course. And then we'll eventually start shipping cattle into London, of course, to keep that business going. So here comes the cattle headed for London. And you notice we're paying interest now. What happened in the last, at the end of the last one, when we hit our goals, we were put in full charge of the company. And we've been carrying a $10 million bond this entire game. We started with a $10 million bond. In fact, if you paid attention, you know how much I love to issue bonds and go into debt. And I haven't issued any in this game because we're maxed out. We've been maxed out the whole time. Another way they've made this particular scenario really hard is that you can't issue more bonds. And that quick little note there, our little old Saguenay, which was a tiny little burg when we started, is now up to 90,000 inhabitants, because we've got a nice setup going. It's got beer meat lines going. It's got other goods being brought in through those warehouses. It's got profitable businesses. Look at this. We've even got the opportunity, if we want to throw another business in there. We're going to expand our tailor because we want to ship that winter clothing. So there we've hit our $8 million. That was pretty easy, as I expected it to be. But now we realize that we've got to ship fur as well. So now we've upgraded our tailor. So we own that tailor, and we've upgraded it 2 times so that it'll produce more and allow us to ship to Toronto faster. Now we're looking for the right place to grab fur to ship it to Ottawa. And of course we're going to have to put back in the station that we deleted, but that's okay. And now we go up here and find the fur business that we've already been running, and we'd like to buy that, but it's pretty pricey. So we'll just settle for expanding our station and shipping more fur out there, and that's one of those, probably should have bought that way back when. So we're going to run a line up here to the north to go around all this track we have that's feeding our original setup, kind of loop it back down around that the city of Grand Lac, Victoria, and then bring it into Ottawa. And this line is going to provide fur for Ottawa, which of course is our next objective we need to hit. And we only need 16 fur, so two trainfuls will get the job done. And to boot, because we had I think we actually came out ahead by deleting the train station, because we deleted it, got a refund for it, then got a bonus connection for connecting Ottawa back to our system. So I think we actually came out ahead by being mildly stupid. Sometimes it pays to be stupid. If it didn't pay to be stupid, some people just couldn't survive, could they? Well, I'm sorry. Anyway, that wasn't nice, was it? All right, so true, but not nice. All right, so here we go with shipping our fur to Ottawa, and we'll run a couple of trains, and that way we know when that second one gets loaded and sent, we're doing all we can do. Now you notice it's loading very slowly, but it should have a demand because it's got the that trading post, which will take the fur. And what I'm thinking here is I need to grow Ottawa, and I think I was really wrong. What I really needed to do was create a place to send that cloth. So even this would have been a good place to even just put a warehouse in and send that cloth to a warehouse. But at any rate, I'm going to run a line from London to Ottawa. So I'm going to build a bypass around Toronto and run a line into Ottawa from London so that we can ship meat into Ottawa to help it grow. Which is a good thing to do anyway, but I think I think my thought here is incomplete or incorrect. What really needed to happen was we need a place for that cloth to go so that it creates the demand for the cloth. If you have the demand for the cloth, then your supplier for that cloth, which is your trading post, is going to want to get fur on a timely basis so that it can meet the demand. But it never hurts to grow a city. It never hurts to make money shipping meat from one city to another. So I built the London line to bypass Toronto, but then I hook it back into kind of that main trunk line that's actually the line running all the way to Saguenay. And now we can run our line from Ottawa and hook it into that same line, and that will give us the ability to ship from London to Ottawa. And since we're going to be shipping automatic lines, which will have basically freight trains running on them, it's already a freight line, so it's not going to hold anything up or cause any problems to share the line. So I ran that out. If you notice how I did that, I should have run the lower of those two lines out first because of the way I was joining it up. But no matter, I ended up kind of stubbing it out and then running the lower one out. and hooking it into the track, the main trunk line, and then finishing off the connection. I hope that made sense. And I think I'm contemplating. I'd like your all's opinion on something else. I'm contemplating doing an updated track layout 101 video, because when I did the original, and I get a lot of great comments. I really appreciate the nice comments people give me about that one. That it's really helped them learn the game. But the track layout's a lot different now. The laying track and how you set signals and stuff is quite different now with the 1.4 update. And so that as good as that video is, and I'm proud of that video, and I get a lot of good comments on it, but it seems a little dated. I'm wondering if it'd be worthwhile to create an update. Tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think people would appreciate having an update to that, or would it just be, is the one we've got sufficient? All right, so now we've got our Ottawa to London line going. And I'm thinking I'd like to buy that trade center and upgrade it, but it's just too much money. So after all that, I think I finally figured out that I really don't have a demand in Ottawa problem. I just slow getting the fur there from that place. It's not creating enough fast enough, and it's also being shared. Of course, it's sending fur off to Saguenay, which needs a lot of fur. So didn't really have a problem with Ottawa. Ottawa needs 2.2 a week, I think it was, as weekly demand, and that's plenty to get us get our 16 ships. So that's not our problem. So I'm solving the wrong problem here. But again, it never hurts to make more money. So here we just upgraded all of our trains that are hooked up to rural stations with the Canadian. And I couldn't think of a way, to do all of our automatic lines. That would be a nice thing to have. But the hookup with rural stations was helpful. So all those trains that are out there bringing goods in from the boonies into our warehouses or into our cities have now been upgraded to the Canadian from the Red Dragon. But again, we've got a lot of city-to-city lines that I would like to have running the Canadian as well. So one more time, the challenge for you guys, tell me how to do that. Now it's interesting too. My London to Ottawa line, if you notice, it's actually using that northern bypass. And this is the other reason I hate inheriting lines, is because I don't always understand what's going on. And I already had a bypass that went around Toronto to the north, so I built one to the south, wanting them to use that, and they use the north, and the north's probably shorter, so that's why they use it. There is a change, by the way, from the original game. If you haven't seen that already, I think I've mentioned this before, but the game will now, if you have a going from A to C and bypassing B in the middle, if you build a bypass around it, even though the shortest route might be right through the city, the route optimizer will automatically take the bypass and go around the city, which is great. Yeah, we have talked about that before, but just talk about it again, which is really good, because that's what you want. You don't want to go plowing through the city and causing a traffic jam. And of course, you could set a waypoint and make sure that it goes on that way, and that's probably a good thing to do, is set the waypoint. But the optimizer will automatically pick the bypass for you if one exists. And that's what it's done here. Even though we set up that southern bypass, it picked the northern one. So now I'm going to set up a line between Sudbury, up here to the north, and Toronto. Again, to grow Toronto, because now we've got beer up there. And it's great to grow these cities. It's great to make the money hauling your goods and all that good stuff. But I'm glad I did all this. However, it seems like I've spent this entire segment solving the wrong problem, because I've really got the solutions already in place. It's just going to take time for that fur to end up down here in Ottawa, and for the winter clothing to end up in Toronto. And it's not so much a function of how big Toronto is or how big Ottawa is. It's a function of just getting that stuff there. So, with that trading post, you've always got a constant demand or trading center, I think they called it in Ottawa. You've got a constant demand for that fur, so there's no problem with getting fur there. With the, at least to get 16 loads. Now, if there's a lot more, we would want to set up the demand on the other side. We would want some kind of reason for that trading center to grow and demand more and more fur. But for just 16 shouldn't be an issue. And to get the clothing, winter clothing, we'll be checking on that here shortly and see that it's working out just fine. And now we're going to pump some more stuff into Toronto. And again, this is all good. It's great to grow these cities. And here, instead of pumping into a warehouse, we're going to do it more. We're going to just pump the goods directly into the city. And that is what actually, it's a weird one, but if you notice there, the tool factory in Toronto requires winter clothing to make tools, which is kind of weird, kind of very weird, but it needs wood and winter clothing of all things to make tools. I'm not sure how that works, but it does. So that that's why we have a demand. That's why we don't have to worry about shipping the winter clothing, because there will be a demand for it in Toronto. And of course, my thinking was I was trying to grow the city so that the city itself would have the demand, but actually that tool factory creates the demand for us. Now we're checking on our, there we go. We finally got 8 of our fur going. We're in good shape on time here because we're kind of ahead, we've caught up and we're kind of ahead of schedule. We struggled at the beginning because the beginning is hard. It's just hard, I think. But we got through all that, and now we're kind of getting ahead. We're getting where we're finishing these things off rather rapidly. So we just got to wait for that fur to get down there. And this is really a critique of my own play here. I should have looked for another source for the fur and kind of run it from another site as well. That would have been a very wise thing to do. So now we have our Achilles. That's the fastest train available in this time period. That's a new train with the DLC. So the Achilles, we've just replaced all of our passenger and mail lines with the Achilles, so we can get even faster trains and charge higher ticket prices and get some express lines and all that good stuff and make more money. And of course, it's hard, I think, to get an express line up well to the north because you get the snowfalls and everything grinds to a halt. So we've got to deliver our fur, we've got to deliver the winter clothing to Toronto, and we've got to have a nice quarterly profit in freight. That's what we're trying to work towards. So all these things we've been doing, shipping wheat to Toronto, setting up the meat line, setting up beer meat line, setting the beer going down to Toronto, all these things are going to help us with our freight goals. We're just kind of looking ahead to see where else could we go to ship freight. We notice Thunder Bay doesn't even have an industry yet. It's so small. But we're going to hold off there because there's nothing close to it that we're allowed to use yet. You see how we're kind of excluded from all those areas. So we could set up an industry in Thunder Bay, but we don't really have anything that would be convenient to ship to it. So we'll hold off on that and keep growing. Toronto's growing. That's nice. We're shipping a lot of stuff there. So we're just looking now for ways to ship more freight. And the other good thing is, we've got that Saguenay to Toronto, that big long line, and we're going to start seeing more and more freight on it as we go along. And you can see now we've actually got return with tools going back to Saguenay, so that's excellent. But we're still waiting to see some actual results. It takes a long time. These are long journeys these trains are having to take. And to tell you the truth, I don't have a clue what I'm thinking right this minute. I'm looking hard at something. Oh, I'm thinking about, okay, I'm looking at, could I get another meat business going somewhere? Because we do have the access to cattle now. Be great to have a beer meat line. So could we go in here and maybe buy out that trading center? And that's going to cost a lot of money. It makes alcohol out of furs. It's going to cost us a small fortune to do that. So is there another place we could put in a meat industry? Well, we could put one in Toronto. Of course, it's already getting meat from London, so that's not the perfect place for it. We do see that alcohol is going to have a customer not too long if Toronto keeps growing, but we're just trying to figure out, okay, what can we do to generate more business in terms of industry? So what we settle on here, if I recall, is a furniture industry. Yes, it is, because what's beautiful about that is we can put in a furniture industry here in Toronto. We can make money on it. We want to expand it. we can sell the furniture to ourselves, so to speak. The Toronto will consume some. We've got wood nearby. We can run the wood down to Toronto, make money shipping the wood, make money making the furniture, and then ship that furniture off to Saguenay because it's a big city and it will take the furniture. So we'll have the winter clothing coming to Toronto and then the tools and the furniture going back to Saguenay, and that'll help us with our freight revenue big time, because we'll get freight revenue off these logs, we'll get freight revenue off the furniture and the tools and the winter clothing, and all is good. And here I get back into delete mode again because I'm having a hard time even seeing those tracks, and it's just weird looking to me. I want to clean it up, so I end up eventually just I started to keep the tracks, and I said no, get rid of them and start over. So there we go. Got rid of all the tracks and started over. Now we're going to run logs down into Toronto. And again, we're not using a warehouse down here, and that would be one thing we could have thought about doing was I could have thought about putting a warehouse in near Toronto. Would have made all these connections easier. In fact, here's a good illustration of how much the new functionality helps us out with this kind of thing, because it does give you that ability to kind of hook your freight into a city and supply a city without getting too close to the city or getting too much traffic. And as it is, we're going to have to, come out of here and build some kind of complex mergers and stuff to make all this work. No big deal, but that's what we're going to have to do. So we're going to take these two lines over here and merge them with those two lines over there, so that we'll have the ability to get into all four platforms. If I can get this to work. There we go. So now we should have the ability to use all those platforms in Toronto, so we can run our logs in, hook them up to this main line coming in, and then branch off to the platform that we want in Toronto.
Assisted by the Grand Trunk Railway, you should be able to push the economies of the colonies forward, so an independent administration will be possible.
So we make sure we use the open platform down there that we worked so hard to set up, and we set up our log line running into Toronto. Here comes some freight revenue from logs. Here comes some freight revenue from furniture. All is well. In fact, I think I needed this anyway for the tool, so this was something that should have been done some time ago. But you can only do so much. You got to kind of you do what you do. All right, and look at that. Here comes those winter clothes. They're coming in from Saguenay. And now that we have money, we can start putting more and more maintenance sheds out there and having our trains really become more efficient as they stay maintained.
Anticipated that your commitment would pay
There
out.
we go.
You may now lay your tracks up to New York. You should definitely grasp this opportunity to make your business more lucrative.
So we've gotten a little more access. We can get all the way down to New York and hit that New York, Syracuse, Portland, Baltimore area. In other words, New England of the United States. So let's go say hi to Don Lorenzo. Oh no, excuse me, to the lady. We'll say hi to Beatrix. You notice I've got the characters' voices turned off. You can only listen to those snide comments so many times. They're cute at first, but they do wear thin after a while. So we're going to set up a dedicated line here, expanding this station, setting up a line, and we've got, the beauty of it is it's actually a beer meat line, because there's a meat industry in New York and there's a beer industry up here in Toronto. So we're going to set ourselves up a nice little beer meat line running between the two cities. Again, helping our freight revenue quite a bit. And those flat connections can be finicky, so you just have to kind of stay with them if you want them. Now the other option, of course, just use bridges and go over. Now here I'm testing, but we don't have a choice here. That's a competitor's line, so we have to bridge over that. But you do, when you lay track like this, particularly through rolling terrain, you want to get rid of, my basic idea is I want to get rid of all bridges and tunnels that I can, and I'm okay with the earthworks. They're not as expensive. So in other words, it's okay. Sometimes you have to dig the earth a little bit to lay your track, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to be creating a whole set of tunnels and bridges everywhere, because that's expensive. Now we'll have to do our little dance to be able to double track this. There we go. That's not too bad. Little curve in there, unnecessary, but actually it is necessary. And there we see that train going back now. It's taking tools and furniture back to Saguenay. So good deal. Now we're starting to get full shipments of freight going between those two cities. And they're both good-sized cities, so that's a good thing. We see that New York does have meat to export. That's great. I wanted to make sure that it was getting what it needed to have the meat ready to export. So now we can have a nice beer meat line between New York and Montreal. And the trains will tend to run full, mostly freight to start with, and then freight and passengers and mail in combo. So this should be a very good profitable line for us. You can see there we paid $100,000 in interest on our bonds for the quarter. That's a lot of money. It really makes a difference on your budget, but no matter, we can handle it. So here we're going to set up another beer meat line, this one from Moncton, our city up in Canada, to Portland, Maine, because they have a meat industry there. We have beer up in Moncton. Moncton's getting wheat from that warehouse in Halifax. So we should be able to set up a nice profitable line here. And the lady's once again getting a little ticked at us because we're building in her turf. Building along this coastline is a little tricky. It's hard to get it's hard to avoid all the bridges and tunnels and stuff without having a lot of inclination, a lot of incline. So I actually accepted a few little bridges here just to keep it from becoming a roller coaster ride. So as we continue to attempt to grow our freight revenue, notice that a dairy business has opened up in Grand Lac, Victoria, and there's milk fairly close by. So all we have to do is run that milk into that handy dandy warehouse and turn the warehouse on for milk so that it can accept milk. And now we'll be feeding milk into that dairy industry in Grand Lac, Victoria. So yet another source of freight revenue. So we'd like to buy that dairy farm so that we can control how big it gets. And here comes Beatrice is going to bid us up, and it's not worth getting in a bidding war. Basically, when they bid against you, if you outbid them twice, you'll win the bid. That seems to be the pattern. They'll up you twice. But actually, now that I think of it, I have had them up me 3 times before. So they can run the price up pretty high. But I guess Beatrix will have to hang on to that dairy business for the time being. It'll be ours soon enough, as you can guess. Okay, here we go. There we go. We hit our freight goal. I knew we were in good shape for it, and with all that we've done.
Royal approval to the British North America Act. The different colonies are now united as the Dominion of Canada.
All right, so we've hit our goals, and we have now have the Dominion of Canada, and now we'll worry about these next set of tasks that we end up getting in our next video. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.